The alien council mocks Earth's delay in responding to their invasion. As they celebrate their victory, they are caught off guard by a colossal, ancient warship, the first of many, rising from the depths of Earth. What was once thought to be a primitive planet now reveals its terrifying secret, and the galaxy will never be the same. The alien council chamber was filled with laughter, a chorus of smug voices echoing through the marble walls. The fleet had moved across the galaxy, with ease, shattering worlds and civilizations that dared to stand in their way. Earth had been one of their most satisfying conquests. They had expected resistance, but there was nothing to resist. The humans had been silent for too long, their once vibrant civilization reduced to myth. Earth's systems had been destroyed, their communication satellites shut down, and their defenses were non-existent. "There's nothing left," one of the council members said, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction. "Earth's response is a joke. They had no choice but to bow to our might." Another member, a large reptilian alien with gleaming scales, added, "How pathetic. We've wiped them off the map without even breaking a sweat. Their planet is nothing but a forgotten relic now." They all laughed again, dismissing Earth's silence as nothing more than the whimper of a broken species. They had waited for Earth's retaliation, expecting a desperate last-ditch effort to defend the planet, but when it never came, the Council was certain they had won. "The humans have shown their true colors," one of the Council members sneered. "They're cowards, hiding in the shadows. No more threats, no more danger. The galaxy is ours." The high-ranking officer overseeing the invasion, a sleek alien known as Girac, smiled in satisfaction. "It's over. The galaxy will never again question our power. Earth's silence is the final surrender." But as Girac finished speaking, a deep rumble shook the council chamber. The walls trembled, and the ceiling groaned with the force of something far more immense than any weapon the council had ever encountered. The laughter died in the aliens' throats as they exchanged confused glances. "What is that?" one of the officers asked, his voice strained with unease. The rumble grew louder, reverberating through the ground beneath them. And then, without warning, the chamber's monitors flickered to life, flashing a distorted image of Earth's surface. It was a haunting sight, one that froze the blood in every alien's veins. From the depths of Earth's shattered crust, a massive warship emerged. Towering above the landscape, it was like a living, breathing titan. Its surface was jagged, covered in scars of age, but the sheer scale of the vessel was staggering. The ship's silhouette blotted out the sun as it ascended slowly from the planet's core, its movements slow, deliberate, but filled with purpose. Girac's eyes widened. He had seen many ships in his time, ancient and modern, but nothing like this. This was not a craft built by any known species. The ship was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. It was a relic, a force of destruction that had been hidden beneath the planet's surface for eons. Its appearance, its size, it could only mean one thing. "The Leviathan," Girac muttered under his breath. "What do you mean?" the reptilian council member asked, his voice filled with suspicion. "The Leviathan," Girac repeated. "It's an ancient warship, one that humanity has kept hidden for centuries. We thought Earth was primitive. We thought they had no means of resistance, but this—" His voice trailed off in disbelief. "This ship is a weapon of unimaginable power." The Leviathan continued to rise, and the alien fleet outside the planet's atmosphere shifted uneasily. Their arrogance had blinded them to the true nature of Earth's power. They had mocked Earth's delay, thinking the humans had no answer to their invasion, but now they were learning the terrible truth. The humans hadn't delayed, they had been preparing. "Is this possible?" the council member asked, voice tight with fear. "How did they hide this?" Girac shook his head, his thoughts racing. The Leviathan was only the first of what was surely many more to come. The ship's hull shimmered with an eerie glow, and the ground beneath it cracked and buckled as the power of its engines thrummed to life. It was a living thing, a part of Earth itself, and it was ready to strike. The monitors flickered again, and a deep, resonant sound filled the chamber, coming from the Leviathan itself. It wasn't just a ship, it was a message. "Prepare for impact," Zirac said, his voice grim. "Earth's response is not a surrender, it's a declaration of war." The alien council scrambled to activate their defenses, but it was too late. The Leviathan, like a vengeful god, let out a deafening roar, and a blast of energy shot from its core, tearing through the air with blinding force. The council's defenses were useless against it, and as the energy beam reached the alien fleet, the first ships were obliterated in a flash of light. "They thought it was mercy," Zirac whispered as the chaos erupted around him. It wasn't. The council, once so confident in their victory, now faced the terrifying reality of Earth's power. The Leviathan was just the beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn that Earth had never been the helpless, primitive world they had assumed it to be. Earth was no longer a target. It was a threat, a force that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. And that was before Earth even responded. The alien fleet, once poised to dominate and conquer, was now in a frantic retreat. Zirac watched in stunned silence as the first Leviathan, the ancient warship of Earth, launched its devastating assault on their forces. What had started as an assured victory for the invaders was quickly turning into a nightmare. The once proud armada, ships of unimaginable size and technology, were being obliterated by a single ship, a relic thought to be nothing more than myth. "What the hell is happening?" one of the alien officers shouted, panic creeping into his voice as the blast from the Leviathan's weapon tore through another one of their flagship vessels. Zirac's grip tightened on the edge of the command console. The Council had been so sure of their victory, so certain that Earth would crumble under their advanced military power. They had mocked Earth's silence, dismissed the planet's apparent lack of response as weakness. And now they were paying the price for their arrogance. "Retreat!" Zirac barked, his voice cold with fury. "We need to regroup, get out of range, activate the emergency jump protocols now!" But it was too late. The Leviathan unleashed another powerful pulse, and the nearest ships began to disintegrate in an instant, their shields collapsing like paper. No warning, no time to react. One moment the ships were intact, the next they were gone, reduced to nothing but debris floating in the void of space. Zirac's eyes darted to the tactical readouts. Their escape routes were being severed. The fleet's last few ships were already taking heavy damage. The Leviathan's weaponry was beyond anything they had ever faced. The energy it expelled was nothing short of catastrophic, disintegrating the alien ships before they could even fire a single shot in retaliation. "It's not just a ship," Zirac muttered under his breath. "It's a weapon, a living weapon." The realization hit him with a crushing weight. The Leviathan wasn't merely an ancient relic, it was Earth's response to the galaxy's attempts to erase it. But Zirac wasn't done. His pride refused to let the fleet fall without trying something, anything to survive. "Divert all power to the remaining ships," he ordered. "If we can't defeat it, we'll at least survive. We'll get the message to the Council, and they'll bring reinforcements." But his voice wavered with uncertainty. He had no idea if reinforcements would arrive in time. No one had ever anticipated Earth being this formidable. No one had imagined that Earth, a backwater world long thought to be insignificant, could rise up with such overwhelming force. Back on Earth, inside the command center of the Leviathan, the humans watched as their plan unfolded perfectly. The Leviathan had been awakened from its centuries-long slumber, just as they had predicted. It wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's final weapon, a ship of unparalleled destruction, hidden beneath the surface of Earth for eons, waiting for the day when the galaxy would come knocking. And now that day had arrived. "Everything is proceeding according to plan," General Carter said, her eyes fixed. on the massive holographic display of the alien fleet being torn apart. "We've sent our message. They thought they could take Earth. They thought we were weak. Now they know what happens when they underestimate us." Her assistant, Lieutenant Steele, nodded grimly. "The first wave is almost completely wiped out, General. The rest of the fleet is retreating, but they're too slow. They'll be caught before they can escape." Carter felt a strange sense of satisfaction wash over her. Humanity had been silent for so long, enduring the scorn and dismissal of the galaxy's most powerful empires, but now they had proven their strength. They were no longer just a planet, no longer just a race waiting to be destroyed. They were the survivors, and they were in control. But even as she took in the victory, her expression remained stern. The fight wasn't over. The first Leviathan had done its job, but there were many more where it came from. Earth's warships, once thought to be relics of a bygone era, were awakening. The galaxy hadn't seen anything yet. "Activate the second Leviathan," General Carter ordered, her voice unwavering. "Let's make sure they never forget who they're dealing with." Back in space, Zirak's fleet was crumbling under the relentless assault of Earth's weapons. The remaining ships, battered and barely holding together, tried desperately to flee, but the Leviathan was relentless. The first ship had already completed its mission of annihilation, and now the second Leviathan began to rise from Earth's surface, its massive frame casting a shadow over the remaining ships. Zirak's mind raced as he watched the second Leviathan breach the atmosphere. He had underestimated Earth once. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. But what could they do? They had no weapons that could even scratch the Leviathan's armor. Their fleets, their tactics, they were all obsolete now. Earth had made its move, and the galaxy would never be the same. "They're sending another ship," one of his officers shouted in terror. "The second Leviathan is coming. We won't survive this." Zirak's eyes narrowed. It was too late to escape. The second Leviathan was already locking onto their ships, the enormous vessel's weapons powered up, and the final remnants of Zirak's fleet were obliterated in a flash. The sheer power of the Leviathan's energy beams was enough to disintegrate entire ships in seconds, leaving nothing but the echoes of destruction in their wake. We've lost," Zirak whispered, his voice hollow with disbelief. He had no words left to express the crushing defeat that weighed on him. "We've failed." The alien council had mocked Earth's silence, had laughed at the thought that a primitive planet would pose any threat to their empire. But now, as Zirak watched the second Leviathan erase his fleet from existence, the truth became painfully clear. The Leviathans weren't just weapons of war, they were a statement. And that statement was simple. Earth would never be forgotten. Earth would never again be ignored. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The atmosphere aboard Zirak's flagship had descended into complete chaos. The remnants of the fleet, battered and broken, drifted in space, powerless against the relentless might of Earth's ancient warships. Zirak sat in his command chair, staring at the empty void ahead, his mind reeling from the events that had unfolded in the past few hours. The once glorious fleet, feared throughout the galaxy, was now a collection of derelict ships, and Earth of all places, had delivered the killing blow. "We have to retreat," one of Zirak's senior officers pleaded, fear dripping from his voice. "We can't face them. We're outmatched. We need to signal the council, call for reinforcements." Zirak clenched his fists, his knuckles white against the cold metal of the armrests. "There's no one coming," he muttered bitterly. "The council won't respond in time. We're alone, and they've already won." The officer shook his head in disbelief. "But Earth, how could they? We destroyed their fleets before. Their defenses were shattered." "We mocked their silence. We never thought they had the strength to strike back." Zirak looked at the view screen. The shattered remnants of the alien fleet scattered across the void like broken toys. The second Leviathan, a massive warship even, larger than the first, loomed ominously above Earth's atmosphere. Its weapons had torn through their ships with a precision and power that surpassed anything Xerac had ever encountered. Earth's silent preparation had been the planet's greatest weapon. They had watched, waited, and when the galaxy's empire least expected it, they struck with a fury that left no chance for retaliation. "They knew we would come," Xerac said, his voice tinged with a mix of anger and awe. Earth knew, and they waited, biding their time. All this time they've been building this nightmare. He paused, his mind racing. The Council was wrong. I was wrong. We thought Earth was weak, primitive, irrelevant, but they've been hiding a power, a force, beneath the surface. We thought we were invincible, and now look at us. A long silence hung in the air as the crew processed Xerac's words. The reality was settling in. Their empire had underestimated a planet that had been lying in wait, preparing for their invasion. The arrogance of the alien council had cost them everything. "Commander, the second Leviathan is locking on to our last remaining ships," another officer reported. "We're running out of time." Xerac felt the cold sting of panic creeping into his chest. They had no defenses left, no weapons powerful enough to withstand the Leviathan's assault. Escape was impossible, and if they didn't act soon, the last remnants of their fleet would be wiped out completely. "We can't outrun it," Xerac said with a grim determination. "We can't fight it, but we still have one option." He turned to the communications officer. "Send a distress signal to the Council. It's our last chance. Tell them everything. Earth is no longer a planet they can ignore. Earth is a power that can destroy us all." The officer nodded and began transmitting the message, but Xerac knew it was a long shot. The Council had already underestimated Earth once. They might do so again. The distance between their fleet and reinforcements was too vast. By the time help arrived, it would be too late. Earth was already in control. As the second Leviathan powered up its weapons, Xerac felt a surge of bitter anger. They had thought their empire would endure forever. They had crushed countless worlds, and Earth had been nothing but a distant, insignificant memory in the grand scheme of things. But the humans had shown them the greatest lesson of all: never assume. Never think you know everything about your enemy. The first blast from the Leviathan's weapons tore through the closest alien ship, disintegrating it in a flash of white light. Xerac watched helplessly as the once mighty ship was reduced to space debris. The remaining ships attempted to flee, but it was a futile effort. The Leviathan's weapons were relentless, its pulse beams hitting their targets with frightening precision. The alien fleet had no chance. They thought it was mercy, Xerac whispered to himself, watching as the remaining ships fell one by one. It wasn't. The last of the ships in the fleet exploded in a blinding burst of energy. The Leviathan's assault was over, but the damage was irreversible. Xerac and his crew were the last survivors, trapped in the remains of their own fleet, surrounded by the aftermath of their own destruction. As the silence of space settled in, Xerac realized there was no more pride left, no more hope for victory. The galaxy would soon learn what Earth had become. They would learn that Earth was no longer a forgotten backwater world. Earth had become a force that could not be stopped. Xerac's hand reached for the console. "Initiate the final protocol. If we can't survive, we'll at least ensure that Earth knows the cost of this victory. Let them see what happens when you provoke a sleeping giant." The officer looked at him horrified. "Commander, we can't win, but we can make them understand what happens when you underestimate us," Xerac replied with finality. With one final push of a button, the countdown the ship's self-destruct sequence began. The last vestige of their fleet would be destroyed, but at least it would send a message. Earth would know that the galaxy had not gone down without a fight. Xerac closed his eyes, letting the silence wash over him. His final thoughts weren't of his failure, nor of his broken empire. They were of Earth, and the lesson it had taught them all. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. Girak's hand trembled as he stared at the countdown ticking away. On the screen in front of him, the last of his fleet had been reduced to space debris, and Earth of all places, had delivered the final blow. The shock of the defeat still reverberated through his mind. How had they been so blind? How had they missed the signs, dismissed the power of a planet they thought was beneath them? The self-destruct countdown continued, the red numbers flashing as if mocking him. His mind raced, torn between the bitter satisfaction of taking something away from Earth and the overwhelming sense of futility. Was there any hope left? Could the galaxy recover from this? Or had they just signed their death sentence? "Commander," one of his officers called, her voice breaking the tense silence. "The countdown is reaching its final moments. Are we sure about this? There's nothing left for us." Girak remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the screen. His crew, his empire, his people, gone. And now he was the last to face the consequences of their arrogance. His final act, his last defiance, would be nothing more than a gesture of defeat. He turned slowly toward his crew, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. They had followed him into battle, only to be obliterated by a force far greater than they had ever anticipated. What was left for them now? What remained in the galaxy for them to conquer? "I'm sorry," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We underestimated them. We thought we could control the galaxy, but Earth was the one thing we never saw coming." The officer at the communications station nodded grimly, understanding the weight of his words. "We've failed," she said quietly. Girak exhaled deeply. It wasn't just that they had failed, it was that they had made a catastrophic error, one that would haunt the galaxy for generations. They had underestimated Earth's silence, thinking it was a sign of weakness, when in reality it had been a calculated move. Earth had been biding its time, waiting for the galaxy to make its fatal mistake. And now Earth was the power, the threat that would reshape everything. "The countdown is complete, Commander," another officer said, his voice hollow with the realization that they were about to make their final exit. "What should we do now?" Girak closed his eyes, the weight of their defeat finally sinking in. He was trapped between two truths, the overwhelming sense of failure and the knowledge that Earth had won, not just against them, but against the arrogance of the entire galaxy. They had taken everything from him, everything from his people, and yet, in the end, the galaxy had learned the same lesson. There was a finality to this moment. The self-destruct sequence was set. There would be no escape for them, no reinforcements, no rescue, just an end. Just the quiet, overwhelming truth that they had underestimated a planet they thought was insignificant. Girak let out a bitter laugh. "Let them know," he whispered. "Let Earth know we never gave up. Let them know we tried." The countdown reached 0. The ship's systems hummed, and in an instant the entire structure detonated, sending a shockwave across space, a final flare of defiance in the face of an overwhelming enemy. And in that instant, Earth's Leviathans watched in silence as the last remnants of the alien fleet were obliterated. The final message was sent. Earth was not a world to be underestimated. It was a power, a force that had been born from silence, and now the galaxy would feel its wrath. As the dust of destruction settled and the shockwaves faded, the few remaining ships that had been lucky enough to escape Earth's wrath began to communicate with each other, forming a fragile alliance. They were scattered, broken and overwhelmed by the power they had just witnessed, but they knew one thing now: they would never be the same. Earth had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. It was no longer a planet to be dismissed. The once mighty empire of Girak, now shattered and scattered, had learned the most painful lesson of all. Humanity's silence was not a weakness. It was their greatest weapon. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't.